Thank you very much. When it comes to the deferred infrastructure that we have, the amount of dollars is roughly pegged at $35 million. And that's because we have roughly a $13 million unfunded infrastructure liability. But then we've also been going year by year, roughly missing out on $2 million. So it's leading us to $35 million right now that we have in deferred infrastructure costs. But the problem with infrastructure, though, is if you defer it, it just doesn't stay like it is. It gets worse. Like a pothole becomes a bigger pothole, and by virtue of becoming a bigger pothole, it costs so much more. So that $35 million can suddenly become a $70 million infrastructure liability. And that's one of the issues that I dealt with when I was on the Fiscal Sustainability Committee 2 years ago. So we have to come up with a way not just of dealing with the unfunded pension liability, but also the infrastructure. And what that means is certainly getting our budget into shape. And it means to looking at out-of-the-box solutions with regards to generating revenues. And what, in particular, I won't raise taxes on persons and households to fund municipal services. But we do need to look at out-of-the-box activities. For example, we need to encourage economic development, not just in the form of more retail, but what kinds of businesses and industries that generate business-to-business sales from which we can accrue sales taxes that are non-retail sales taxes. We also need to take a look at making Alameda maybe a more visitor-friendly place, taking a look at people who want to travel on a short distance, maybe getting people who want to get away from Modesto but want to come to the Bay Area but don't necessarily want to pay San Francisco prices. How can we attract the short-term visitors? Also, we want to take a look at the visitors who work in downtown Oakland, who are here, who are visiting from elsewhere but working temporarily in downtown Oakland. How can we get them to come to Alameda? So, and also for our retail too, we also want to attract more spenders from outside. So those are various ways of generating revenues without adding taxes to the existing current residents and businesses. Because we have to get our budget in order to begin to tackle the outstanding unfunded liability of roughly $200 million. It's in the CAFR, the audited comprehensive audited financial report. $95 million in unfunded liability on the retirement side, $100 million on the healthcare side. That's $200 million. It's not going to come due all today, but at some point in time, it is a liability that we have. We owe previous workers and we owe future workers that amount of money. We've identified X, but we really need to go Y, and that difference is $200 million. So we need to get our fiscal house in order, look at out-of-the-box economic development, sales tax generating, TOT generating kind of solutions.
Right, I'm not going to give you any more numbers. Let's just talk about number one. Deferred payments. It will cost money we don't have. As a small business owner, you either decrease your expense, increase your revenue. How do we decrease our expenses? We're very low. We're 489 employees in the city. We're in furloughs, and our expenses are almost bottom line, flat line. There's no more cuts for us to do at this point. So what else do? Increase our revenue. Small business owner, I know, I understand payroll, I understand overhead. We have Webster Street, revitalized Webster Street, make it more vibrant. We have Marina Village, we have South Shore that are practically ghost towns. Bring in more tenants, work with the landlords, see if we can bring in more sales tax. It's not just sales tax, there's business license tax, there's utility tax, and we can also work with, like Tony said, hotel tax. We can make Alameda a destination spot. People come, shop, and visit our neighborhood, and there's a lot of revenues that can be created if we bring in more visitors, more shoppers. So we got to increase our revenue instead of just keeping focus on cutting, and work on this potential. We have to increase revenue, and the only other way for us to increase revenue is franchise tax. Maybe go back to the AMP and say, hey, what else can we do? Work together, work collaboratively, increase our revenue so we can fix our infrastructure. And it's not just the roads and the streets, it's also public buildings, swimming pool, utilities, buildings that needs to be seismic regulated. There's a lot of issues that are facing us, but if we don't bring the money in, we can't fix it. And as a city, we have control over what kind of revenue we can generate. And the easiest way is a vibrant business community. Thank you.
This by moving around because now they have to try and follow me. Being a camera person myself, I will try and stay put. Anyway, this is where my 30 years of business experience comes in, because I looked at my own balance sheet and my own P&L, and I had to deal with the exact same situation. And I don't believe we really can cut more. However, we are looking, right now the city is looking at getting better cost recovery in the areas where we are delivering services, where we're not actually recovering all of those costs. So I believe that there's some room there for income to come into the city. Also, for those that are real estate agents, you can raise your hand, but it's my understanding that the real estate market is coming back, that there are now multiple that there are multiple offers on houses now, and that houses are going up, which means assessed values go up. If assessed values go up, property taxes go up. And then it becomes incumbent upon the city to prioritize the increase in revenue from year to year. And if that's going to be for roads, if it's going to be for a new fire truck, because we know it's only going to last 12 years, then that's what we need to do. Council has the opportunity to give direction to the city manager on those types of items. So I think that's a great opportunity, and we just need to prioritize what those expenses are so we can do that. Interestingly, on the Measure C that we had that did not pass, some of the information when we did polling on this was half the people thought the roads were fine in Alameda, and the other half thought they were terrible. So it depends on where you live, but I think we can get our maintenance under control.
Hi. So I was very disappointed when Measure C, the recent sales tax increase, didn't pass. And it wasn't that I loved every single thing about this, about the measure, but what I found extremely compelling was that we need our emergency command center that is currently in the basement of the police department, that is already too small for the full command in the case of an emergency. They can't even be in the same room together. We needed to replace that. Fire Station 3 needs to be replaced. The city is paying lots of money, right, Lena, per year to rent a house for the firefighters who can no longer live in Fire Station 3 because it's not seismically safe. There are a series of public workshops, and it's the same public workshop that will be done 3 times over starting tomorrow night, where the city's going to talk about some of the ways we'll look into funding this. So I'm going to be there. I hope you will too. And as someone else mentioned, there is a budget task force that will be reporting to the council the first meeting in October, ways that they have looked at to help to streamline our budget. I do know, though, Lisa Goldman, Assistant City Manager, has done some great reports to the City Council, and she's detailed that every department in the city has cut deeply, and yet avoiding the kind of cuts that would impact the public services. I'm happy to say that library hours were not reduced, that parks will remain open, and those are good things. But, you know, it's an old adage, but it's still true. We need to grow our revenue and cut our expenses. And I think our expenses are pretty much cut to the bone, but I guess you can always learn more. The city's total budget for fiscal year 2012 and 2013 is $160 million. 40% of that represents the general fund, and that's the city's main source of unrestricted funds. And I don't know if you know, I was a little surprised, the realtors in the room probably wouldn't be, but the major sources of revenue for the city is property tax, first and foremost. Oh, I gotta talk fast. Okay, and only 26% is sales tax, which tells you, and that's changed in the days since all the car dealers with those high ticket sales tax items left town. So we do need to attract more development into areas like Alameda Landing and our business parks. What I want to say is that Public Works does have an extensive schedule of replacement and maintenance of its various assets. And you know, Public Works is not only responsible for roads and sewer lines, it oversees all the vehicles, the public vehicles. Okay, and just really quickly, because you said I could finish my sentence. Now that the city council has passed the housing element, one of the things that did is it keeps us from being sued. That's a good thing. It also opens us up to receiving funding from entities like the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which will fund some of the work that Public Works needs to do. So this is a good thing. Thank you.
Being last sometimes does you disservice because a lot of people have already made many of the points that I wanted to make. We clearly do have an unfunded liability for a shortfall for the amount that we need to spend to maintain our city assets. The Fiscal Sustainability Committee estimated that it was $9.5 million in 2009, 2010, and that it would grow since then. For all I know, those estimates were low based on what has happened. It is really a scary kind of thing. And the Fiscal Sustainability recommended that we fully fund deferred maintenance liability. Well, what that means is we need more money, of course. And if we need more money, how do we get it? Well, we have to reduce expenses or increase revenues. I mean, as everyone has pointed out, those are really the only solutions to the budget crisis. And I have been told over and over again that we have reduced expenses to the bone. That is a phrase that I've heard my compatriots use, and I think I've heard that from city staff as well. If we don't have expenses that we can cut, how can we increase revenue? Again, I come back to the notion of finding ways to jumpstart some renewal at Alameda Point. Particularly, I'm intrigued, as I said, by the proposal of a master lease that could bring in some immediate cash infusion to the city. But in general, in terms of budgeting process, here's where I would come at it. I think the first thing we need to do is to identify very specifically what our core needs are in the city. We need public safety, we need fire protection, we need police protection, we need our streets to be drivable, we need a lot of other things in our core values. But let's identify exactly what those are, and then start looking at whether there are more cost-effective ways to provide any of those services. I don't think we can say, well, we provided them this way in the past, and so we can't consider other options. I think we need to look in that. But once we have figured out what those core services are and figured out how we can provide them in the most cost-effective way, figuring out how much it's going to cost and how much we have available, at that point, and only at that point, can we look at the kinds of things that are not core services. The kinds of things that I think make Alameda such a wonderful town to live in, but if we can't afford them, we can't do them. We can't do everything all at once. And so it's a tough problem. I think that this is a very, very serious issue for all of us to consider, and I think it's a very serious issue that the City Council will be addressing. Thank you very much.